Excellent. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the release of the Unknown State of Impact report of 2023. And this morning we'll dive into the insights into corporate impact actions in Finland. This is now our second State of Impact report. The first one was released in early 2022. So now we had already some history data, and we're able to at least kind of to look back to 1 year ago on the developments in Finland. A few words about the agenda today. So we'll go through the main findings on the study, and the presentation will take some 45 minutes. And after that, then I know I've booked 1.5 hours for this. The reason being that last year there was a lively discussion afterwards, and we were sorry to cut it short. So then we have plenty of time of questions and answers, but especially to kind of have a discussion about how we could, what actions we should all be taking, or how we could kind of help the whole country and Finnish companies move forward in the arena of building impact-led businesses. So that's the agenda, and thus if you only have 1 hour, don't worry, we'll be able to go through the full presentation before that hour ends. But then, and I'm here today joined by my colleague Minna Mustakallio. Good morning, Minna.
Hello.
Minna is the impact lead of Unknown. However, this morning we decided that in the interest of simplicity, I will be doing most of the presentation, and Minna will be then helping us answering some questions and giving comments, especially where my expertise falls short. And Minna has a long background in both sustainability and having studied business geographics already in the university, and then she also is our lead for responsible AI, which is a increasingly important part of impact work in all companies. And my name is Liisa Holma, and I'm the CEO of Unknown. My own background is in the corporate world in Nokia and Tieto, and then now been leading Unknown since its beginning, a bit less than 3 years ago. And then maybe my expertise is more on the social impact side. I have a podcast relating to the topic called Lähtijät, which looks into the reasons why people leave workplaces. And then my special interest is in the social questions. But then let's dive into the study. A few words about this study and the study we did the previous year. This year we did the study in late 2022, early 2023, and when we will compare to findings in the previous study, we compare to a study that was done 1 year prior, so in late 2021. The information that we will be presenting is based on this research that was done in early this year. And in our survey, we received responses from 147 individuals across companies in Finland. The companies represented 19 industries. And if we think about kind of how the different participants are split between different roles in these companies, then the majority was managers or owners/partners, representing 90% of the respondents. Then we had 16% of directors, 12% of experts, and then CXOs representing 11%. In addition to the survey, what we did was we took the main findings from the survey, and we then had deep interviews with 3 C-level executives from textile, consumer goods, and finance industries. And these people were working in roles of HR, sustainability, and strategy officers. So we were able to get the C-level perspective to the findings, and we will be then in this presentation referring to their perspectives as comments from the insiders. The main findings in the study were as follows. There are maybe 6 things that were mainly apparent. First of all, we see that in Finland, organizations are striving to move from reporting to concrete actions in their impact work. So while maybe in the previous years, what we've seen is a lot of ESG-related reporting, we're more and more starting to see real actions taking place as well. We see that the importance of biodiversity, DEI, and responsible AI are growing, and this is visible in the discussions that we've had and in the survey response. However, the impact-led business development is still facing obstacles, and we're not seeing as much of it as we'd like to. The very important role of middle management is a bit complex, and they're getting mixed messages, which reduces their commitment to the work. We also noticed that this impact-led business places totally new demands on the CXO level leadership. And finally, we still see that internal communications and employee branding are major motivations for impact-related activities in companies. But let's dive into a bit more details. So we asked about what different parts of sustainability and impact are part of the company's strategic agendas. Now, majority of the companies have listed climate and biodiversity as things that they specifically mention in their strategy. They prioritize implementing and documenting operational changes and doing ESG reporting, especially, of course, in listed companies. We see that since we're kind of getting more and more reporting on actual concrete things that are being done, we see that little by little, the importance of not just talking about intentions and targets that the companies have set for themselves, we see the actual reporting of real actions is getting more and more important together with the measurable outcomes. And almost all of the companies, of course, kind of said that they have the outcomes as part of their reporting, but also kind of 45 to 60% of companies said that they are very active both in reporting and implementing actions and measures. So it seems like in totality, the companies that responded in the surveys have seen that talking about sustainability and impact work is no longer enough, but people, both investors, customers, and employees more and more require actions and reporting on those actions. Minna, do you have something to add here or any thoughts about this particular point?
Yeah, just in comparison that yes, we are going from just reporting something to actually measuring something and actually improving something, but we're not there yet with the kind of like actually using their impact as a kind of like business driver. So we're kind of getting there, but we are not really kind of going forward, like full forward yet, I think, with the companies.
Yes, I think it's a good summary. So very much the actual kind of the actions revolve around minimizing negative impacts of the existing business, not building new sustainable businesses. Well, maybe kind of a positive thing in our mind is that we can see in the answers that biodiversity, DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion topics, and responsible AI are seen as things that companies themselves realize they need to start spending more time with. So companies increasingly acknowledge that conserving biodiversity is a critical action for them and a critical priority for everyone. And they're trying to find ways to do just this. However, the work is a bit the work is found challenging because for biodiversity, there is no clear clarity of what the correct actions are for different companies. So different companies are should look into their own core business and dive deep into what especially is their impact on the biodiversity, and then start mitigating that. But this whole loop of starting by looking into where your core business impacts biodiversity is still a bit open, and many companies are still just learning how to do this. Of course, with the increasing talk also in the media about diversity, equity, and inclusion, there is a heightened awareness of the topic also within organizations. However, here as well, we see that the concrete actions are still a bit open for the companies. So many are still trying to understand what DEI means for them in practical operational terms. And here we think that one of the most important things for companies to realize is that by implementing ways that take into account visible diversity and make sure that people from socially or racially or gender-based different backgrounds, that when we are sure that everyone gets a say on the table, we also make it easier for people who are not visibly diverse to engage in the work. So finding that practical implementation, finding that way to practically take it into operation, and finding a way to make sure that the processes in a company equally work for everyone, regardless of their background or culture, is of key importance to assure that collaboration and innovation has the best possible possibilities in the company. And then finally, with the AI and machine learning developing super fast, there's increasingly interest from all stakeholders on where the data comes from, how is it used, and what actually goes into the algorithmic decision making. Not many of the stakeholders are super well aware or super versed in the topic themselves yet, but we're seeing that the questions are starting to be raised, and companies cannot be caught not prepared for these questions. And I think that many of the companies are trying to get up and running with the work. All of these topics have that one a bit of a challenge, is that quantifying and measuring the impact of this work is quite challenging, and we still need to work to develop measures to clarify the actions we take in biodiversity, DEI, and responsible AI areas, in order to be able to also communicate the work outwards and also set targets. Now, Minna, you are our responsible AI lead and also leading the impact action. So did I omit some important topics that you'd like to add here?
No, not really. In terms of the AI, I think there is some collective confusion in the companies at the moment, because they are finding themselves in the situation where, on the first time, they are really starting to raise these questions about how they actually use technology and how they make sure that they are using technology responsibly. It's not only AI, but because it's such a hot word now, it's kind of raising all these questions that are not only about AI, but really how to use technology responsibly. And what they are also facing is that they're kind of, okay, let's just do some principles. And then they're like, wow, that's a bigger issue. It's quite a lot of work to understand how first of all, to understand how much you are using technology, and especially digital technology, in your operations, and also kind of towards the consumers. And then it's also quite a lot of work to make sure that you govern that as you govern any other thing that's sensitive and important, and also how you then especially kind of educate your people about, like, how does this kind of a bit alien thing that everybody's a little bit like, what's this? Kind of how does that actually kind of matter in your own job, in your own work? What kind of guidelines do you need? When should you be worried? When you shouldn't be worried? Because now it's just confusion. So just to kind of like to open up a little bit, where does this whole kind of AI topic come from?
Excellent. An excellent summary, and we'll be glad to answer any further questions after the presentation part, when we get to the discussion and questions part. Well, then, exactly as we said, or kind of a few minutes ago, the impact-led business development still faces obstacles. So while companies report that they are more and more taking actions to minimize the negative impacts of their business operations, what we don't yet see is companies considering the impact of their actions and sustainability factors when they think about what sort of new businesses they should be developing. So the type of kind of, we see that in this moment of time, there would be great opportunities in trying to grasp ways to build business that would make, for example, within one industry, the work more sustainable, more responsible. So leading that way would be a great opportunity for the company, both kind of PR and media-wise, for employee branding-wise, and then finally, of course, business-wise, because what's sustainable usually uses less resources and is thus also more effective. But we don't see many of the companies still kind of getting there, and it's clear that the topic is complex and we need to learn more to get there. However, only by kind of companies starting to solve the global challenges that we have, can we change the future of the planet for the better, the future of the people for the better. And also we see that this is somewhere where we would hope that Finnish companies would take a great role, because it would also future-proof the industries in Finland. But in the survey, only a minority of companies, approximately 15 to 25%, reported that they use impact lens when they venture into new business opportunities designed to generate positive social or environmental impacts. So we still need to understand better. We still need to do more work to find a way to create innovations and develop new businesses that would build a better tomorrow. And this kind of all parts of our business system require that we take the impact lens, we take the responsibility lens, and we look into how do we operate today, and how can we build business that operates better and solves some of the problems that we've created during the past 150 years. So how can we kind of build business that takes it into themselves to solve some of those issues? But that still is kind of only starting. However, kind of, as we stated earlier, last year, the little green bars, which show purely reporting actions within companies, the little green bars were higher than the blue bars. The blue bars are taking actual measures and doing actions to minimize the impacts. So we saw that overall the green bars were higher last year, and we hope that next year when we redo the survey, we can see that the yellow bars i.e. the impact-led innovation work, are increasing furthermore, so that we can see that the ramp up in Finland will get going faster. And of course, kind of customer demands and regulatory demands are the ally here. So we all know that in the coming years, regulation is going to get tighter. Customers will demand more visibility and more responsibility from companies. So we're sure that also the yellow bars will get rising with the company actions to start building more sustainable business. But it's still early days, and it can be seen here. Any additions, Minna?
No, not really at this point. I think you went it through pretty thoroughly.
Yes. Well, then, one of the more surprising and more puzzling findings in our report was the skepticism of middle management towards company responsibility and impact agendas. To be completely honest, when we first kind of saw that across the answers, here are only a few examples, but across the answers, director and VP level are the most kind of conservative, most skeptic towards company actions relating to impact and sustainability. We were first a bit puzzled, and this is actually kind of one of the places where the interviews were super helpful, and the possibility to discuss the results with 3 excellent C-level executives, whom we thank for their time. So in these discussions, little by little, we started to understand that the role of middle management is super difficult in companies. The middle management, on one hand, is tasked with implementing the strategy, tasked with taking the strategic project further, but especially during the past years, middle management has also been the people who have been given the increasing effectivity targets and cost-cutting targets. So basically what they're being tasked with is doing strategic impact work while at the same time cutting cost. And no wonder they start to feel a bit skeptic about the impact work. So then the question becomes, how could we make sure that even though the financial realities and the economic cycles impact the companies, how could we make sure that we keep the middle managers, who are at the end of the day super important in actually realizing the company impact actions? How do we make sure that they stay committed and optimistic about the possibility to make a real change? Because these people it's not that they wouldn't want to make a change, it's just that they don't see it happening because of the mismatch of priorities. And of course, this is concerning because the role of middle managers in driving real operations in companies is crucial. But in reality, the palette of things, the palette of priorities, the unclarity of priorities with mixed messages makes it super hard for middle managers and middle management to see what really are the things that they should prioritize in their daily work. And I think here again we get back to the fact that it's at leadership level we should make sure that enough time is spent first to set clear enough priorities, few enough priorities, but also to communicate how the different priorities relate to each other and what is the kind of bundle of priorities that the company has. And then also to make sure that at a certain time, a certain kind of unit in the business doesn't get overly swamped with crisscrossing priorities, which will then end up in a situation that the people doing the work will have to prioritize for themselves because they just don't have time to actually commit to each of the priorities they are given. And this scenario is the worst possible outcome because every unique individual will end up with very different prioritization without clear communication on what the shared priorities are. So while it might be kind of tempting to give down several priorities and think that we can, as a large company, for example, prioritize 10 things, but when all of those 10 things end up on the table of a single individual, that person has to do the prioritization themselves. And they will then prioritize how they themselves see best fit if they are not given any tools to do that. And this is very clearly visible in these findings. So we need to empower and support middle management, but also kind of make sure that the interaction relating towards and the discussion relating to priorities goes both kind of from up to down and then across the organization and to all possible direction, also from down to up, and make sure that the discussion is super open and we're aware of where the commitments lie and whether it's clear to everyone how the different financial targets and the strategic impact targets relate to one another. Anything to add here, Minna?
I don't know if to add, but it's just, I think this was really interesting, this whole finding, and it really clearly shows that the companies are making themselves a bottleneck for kind of proceeding with these kind of priorities that go across silos. And the line management is just, at the moment, the line management is kind of still there very forcefully, kind of pushing certain goals that obviously, like every unit has their own goals, and they are or the end result is that the line management or the line goals are still very much kind of prioritized over anything that goes across the silos or across the units. And that's kind of a C-level problem. It's a problem that you don't have honest discussion. You don't have enough discussions from C-level to the middle management. And it's more like just passing the ball and saying that, can you please handle this? And this is what we still see. And I mean, it has it's not a unique problem. It also concerns many other things than impact or sustainability. But it's just that I think it's just so clear now that same problem is now prohibiting also sustainability innovations and kind of going forward with these kind of things, impact and sustainability or whatnot, that goes across everything.
Excellent point, Minna. So this is a topic that comes up in all customer experience, digitalization, innovation work, and now sustainability. So we have an increasing amount of maybe a bit recent topics that go against the way we have traditionally seen companies. So traditionally we saw companies as business units vertically operating, those business units either being different products or different lines of business or maybe regional business units. And they could operate quite kind of autonomously previously, but now we have an increasing amount of topics that actually cut across that viewpoint, and we need more and more ways to make sure that we can also kind of allow for operations that go across the different silos, go across business units and businesses, and that is proving to be quite difficult in the way we have traditionally led matrix organizations. So we draw the organizations into matrices, but we still end up leading them more or less in one direction. And then this is also a topic where we got one excellent quote from one of the C-level leaders we talked with. They saw that The non-commitment in middle management is probably influenced by economic uncertainty and the resulting pressure to cut costs. Sustainability, however, is often more cost-effective. In principle, all decision makers within a company should constantly consider the impact of their actions and decisions, but we're still quite far from that because the topic is still unfamiliar. Continuous evaluation of what should be continued and what shouldn't be continued. Should be discontinued. So basically, we're here seeing that yet again we're in an unfamiliar ground, and we need to ramp up the know-how and the skills in the company to tackle the questions. And I think that, as with many other topics, the challenge becomes that while leaders are the ones that have to make the decisions because they are the ones who are able to look across business lines, at the same time, making these decisions requires you to go quite heavily into the details, close down to the actual operations, and dive deep into information. And that combination very often is problematic because at the same time, in a leadership role, you have a lot on your table, but you should find time to kind of grasp the reality of certain details and dive deep into the data. And before you can learn to do that, before you can learn the details of yet again this kind of new area, we will see this being a bottleneck. But a bottleneck that maybe now that we've recognized it, we're able to solve going forward. Well, then this takes us easily to the next key finding, which is then the changing role of CXO level leadership. The C-level, for reasons that we just discussed, is in key role solving the impact. It's kind of, or getting the impact work going in a company. So we need the C-level leaders to build the bridges between the different business units, build the bridges between different teams, and make sure that the network of individuals that do work relating to wherever the company's impact is greatest, so that those teams can collaborate. We need C-level leaders to make sure that those bridges are there. Basically because this is work that probably isn't designed in the organization structures, and it has to be actually facilitated a bit kind of off the organization charge, more like a network of individuals and teams than actual hierarchies that would exist already in the company. Further than that, the C-level should be responsible for defining what really is strategic in the impact questions for a company in question. So what really is those impact and responsibility topics that this specific company should focus on? And what are the goals that we aim to reach relating to that work? But of course, this type of work, again, requires that the CXO level leaders are able to dive into the details to grasp the full picture of the impact of their current line of business. How are they impacting the world around them in social terms, in biological terms, in climate terms today, and how can they make sure that their core business has a more positive impact in the world tomorrow? It's a lot of information that traditionally hasn't been on the C-level leaders' tables, and of course, learning takes time. But at the same time, across the board, all other roles see that the C-level leadership is the only role that can be leading this action. So boards see that their role is to set the stage, and then as with strategy, they expect C-level leadership to then be operationalizing that strategy that the board has set based on a proposition from the leadership team. And here we need the C-level leaders to kind of not maintain the abstract or high-level perspective, but we need them to dive deep into the details in what comes to impact and sustainability topics, and maybe kind of be in a crash course mode, learning the new skills. And here, maybe kind of as an idea that we had with Minna and the rest of our Unknown team when we discussed this, was that maybe kind of some sort of division of priorities or division of responsibilities or roles within the leadership team, who takes into the kind of for themselves to dive deep in different areas that are important for a company's operations. That might kind of be a good start in grasping as a team level the reality, and start building a leadership team that can discuss also the impact, sustainability, and responsibility topics fluently together as a team. And of course, here C-level also needs to collaborate with middle management and experts to kind of understand the totality of a company's impacts. Minna, anything to add here?
I think it's just really important point that whole kind of that the teamwork of the C-level team needs to raise to another level with these kind of topics. So I'm just giving an example that a client that I'm working with, they had to quite quickly start to work on responsible AI, data and AI, and and the result was that, okay, because this needs to happen fast and it's important, one of the C-level leaders took that topic under their wing and is now working with other leadership team members, but also like with middle management, with experts, to actually kind of get this going. And it's reported like directly to the C-level, obviously, because they're talking about this thing in their leadership team. So it's this kind of like, okay, somebody takes it, but then it's kind of discussed in the whole leadership table, and this seems to be very much the effective way of doing these things.
Exactly. Thanks, Minna. And here yet again a great quote from one of the C-level leaders we talked with. Leadership requires a certain kind of humility. When faced with something new, instead of denying the struggle, it's better to just sit down and contemplate how to approach it. It becomes easier to ask for help. By acknowledging that one doesn't truly know and working together, we can find solutions we didn't even realize were possible. So especially kind of finding the way to have the discussions across different specialties, across different hierarchy levels in the organization, across different businesses, we can find solutions and also kind of get ideas for new businesses that we didn't know were there. And this becomes increasingly important when many of the new challenges that we face are more and more complex. So in complex situation, multi-skilled collaboration becomes more and more important. And then the final key finding in F as final, focus still kind of the motivational focus still shifts towards internal communications and employee branding. So we asked the respondents, what do they see as the most promising opportunities for the companies in increasing positive impact? And as was last year, it's still so that majority of the respondents see that the most kind of the biggest positive impact is in recruitment and employee retention. So as people, as we have seen in media, engaging people in companies is a struggle, and we see more and more people changing jobs. We see more and more unfilled positions in companies. So the recruitment topic in general is a strategic one, and anything that can help in engaging people and luring new recruitments is seen as beneficial. And so here companies want to be known to be responsible and doing the impact work in order to to get the best talent. With Minna, we were wondering whether we are a bit skeptic about this, or how to take this kind of that we're still here. The most optimistic I can be is to think about this, that if as a company you're able to hire and keep people who feel passionately about impact topics, that will mean that the demand for actions and developing new types of businesses surely will increase within the organization. So it could be that this is a way, or an inbuilt way, to actually kind of increase the pressure towards companies to actually engage more and more in impact-related work. Well, the second then reason companies saw is then new growth areas and markets, and then as a third, innovation opportunities. And of course, the second and third are the ones that are a bit kind of behind why we wanted to start making this study. We see that we believe that in the coming years we will see more impact-led innovation, more growth driven by impact-related work in companies, and we forecast that we will see these lines increasing in the future. But it's still early stages, and this is where we are now. And here, kind of the middle management, however kind of skeptic they might themselves be, they still recognize that employees, their own teams, are giving pressure for the company to tackle these topics, and they have an important role in spearheading sustainability efforts. So we believe that this will be hopefully a self-fulfilling prophecy at best. Anything to add to my overly optimistic view of the situation, Minna?
No, not really. I think I quite totally agree. And obviously, I mean, it is there's a reason to be optimistic, because at the same time, if we ask like, what are your biggest challenges at the moment as a company, is most of the companies actually will be replying that like a shortage of skilled people. So at least we have a driver here.
Yes, exactly. And I think this was also a very good comment from one of the C-level commenters. They thought that competitors now share an almost identical message regarding responsibility. It is no longer necessarily a differentiating factor towards customers, but rather a hygiene factor. However, there may be greater opportunities when it comes to recruitment. Additionally, patient ownership and having a long-term perspective are important. As institutions weaken, trust is sought from employers. So what this relates to is, first of all, the kind of first part of the statement saying that when we're still operating, or the focus is still on the ESG reporting and minimizing effects of existing operations level, the message becomes very similar. So what companies can only talk about is reduce kind of carbon neutrality, and the message is very similar across companies, regardless of the industries. So before we get more nuances in the ways companies are active in the impact scene, the more similar the message is. But then, of course, in recruitment, you can then work towards a clearer message, maybe kind of more future-looking ambition in your impact work, which can then work as a way to engage people and brand yourself as an employer. But then also kind of here we see an interesting viewpoint from this particular leader, in that we would kind of also look into this from the ownership perspective, that how does patient ownership, not the kind of being driven about quarter economics and actually kind of being able to hold those priorities on a longer term, how does that impact the whole picture? So maybe here then companies can be more nuanced in their messaging towards the potential employees. So to summarize then the work, the report, and this presentation, well, first of all, we need a stronger leadership from all companies so that we'll fully embrace the business opportunities that these challenges and changes are presenting. And of course, kind of it feels a bit cynical to look at these as business opportunities. Here, our viewpoint is that once businesses and companies see them as opportunities for their businesses to grow, they will have more incentive to also invest in improving their footprint and also building a positive handprint, to use the terminology that now is getting more popular. The landscape of sustainability efforts is still evolving, and especially with biodiversity, DEI, and responsible AI, which all are a bit kind of a hyping topics at the moment, it's still unclear how do you measure these different topics? What are the real actions? And of course, also climate action continues to be center stage. We will need kind of the impact discussion, the sustainability discussion will only get more nuanced, and we will be less and less work using umbrella terms like sustainability and responsibility, and we will more and more be seeing discussion about the detailed parts of that sustainability. And in this environment, companies must navigate the challenges and learn ways to quantify and measure their own impact in the world, and also how they change that impact for the better in the coming years. This way, they will be also kind of able to target their own actions. And businesses who are willing to take initiative, take a little risk, build impact-led new businesses can position themselves as leaders against their competitors, and it will probably be beneficial not only towards customers and investors, but also towards employees and in recruitment. What then are our recommendations for all companies? We recommend that the first step is to start by identifying the sustainability challenges that your customers are currently facing. Looking into where are your customers, where are your existing customers, pain points relating to the topic, and learning how you could possibly help your customers overcome those challenges. Then you need to understand the impact of your core business. So not just the packaging of your products, but actually the manufacturing and building those products themselves. You need to look beyond conventional solutions and structures and explore alternative and innovative ways to tackle the issues. And here collaboration across different teams across the company is vital. So here we need bridge building from the C-level leaders. And then finally, engage your in-house team and encourage them to contribute the insights and expertise. Minna, any final additions before we close the presentation part?
Yeah, not really. Maybe just to emphasize the kind of like doing the first step, like if you think about like, okay, what to do if we haven't done anything about this kind of like we have like just our ESG numbers and that's it. I was thinking that it's maybe start with something like, I don't know, maybe like the upright is nice. It's like just kind of going and setting the stage that you are in understanding what your impact really is. That's where it really starts. It definitely doesn't end there. It's really like, okay, now we know approximately how our industry and we as a company impact in good and bad in society, for example, and then you have to actually dive in. But it's good to start from somewhere. So that's one thing. Then there was a question, by the way, I don't know if you see that, about the if we saw differences in the result when the parameter was the company size, and we expected that there would be, but right?
Yes, we tried to look for we had kind of different demographic factors in this survey. We expected different levels of activity per company size and also per age. So our initial hypothesis, actually based on the good discussion we had last year after the presentation, our expectation was that younger companies would be further along on the development, because if you would kind of start a company today, surely you would have less historical kind of baggage to drag towards the new future. But we didn't see much difference in activity, not a statistically important difference in levels of activity or focus from the new companies nor the larger or smaller companies. I think that here the regulation, especially towards listed companies, is actually kind of impacting the results. Now that I've been kind of thinking about it, I think that since the regulation much comes from the IFRS reporting demands, then even the larger companies have been forced to start acting more than they maybe otherwise would have. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's. I guess it's like I must say that I also expected that there would be more differences, but alas, no.
Yeah. And then finally, before we get to the discussion, the report is now available on our website. You can download it, the full report there. This was the presentation material. In the full report, there is more information. Please go and download, and we'll be glad to continue the discussion now in this call and then also afterwards, online and offline. Thank you. So then maybe any questions or comments or thoughts about the actions and future. Thank you, Susanna. Thanks for being here. Not much discussion. Did we have any other? Oh, hey, Satu. Oh, Katja, moi.
Oh, sorry, was there someone else before me?
No. Go ahead, Katja.
Okay. Yeah, very relatable subjects, and I can kind of see at my workplace also how it's important to have the setting a strategy about the sustainability and the impact of that, and then with the same time at the employee level that there has to be drive from there also to kind of achieve those goals together. So yeah, that seems pretty valid here also.
Yes, agreed. Thanks, Katja. And I think that the collaboration part, it's recently I've spent quite a bit of time maybe kind of with our customers, but also outside customer project, thinking about how we could improve the networking within organizations, that somehow kind of the idea that the work would get done in the way it looks like in an organization map starts to feel more and more untrue for me. That I more and more feel like the real work gets done by a network of people, not kind of something that looks like an organization map. And realizing that and making sure that those connections within the network are kind of taken care of is vital for the collaboration within a company.
And if I might add in that point also that can be seen also in LinkedIn, that there are many these kind of communities and groups established now, that people are starting to talk with each other from different companies and with different networks. And yeah, so I hope that also brings information and vipuvoima, how do you say that in English, also to the business sides to drive the change.
Yes, agreed. Yeah. Good point, Katja.
And I think it's also that, for example, that with the example I discussed about like C-level taking the initiative, I think it's also for them to understand that this challenge will not solve itself by us pushing it kind of down towards our kind of like current organization. It's just going to get stuck. So they're finally starting to realize that this is actually our responsibility as consultants also, to make them understand that you do not have a way to solve this at the moment. You need a new way. By saying that this is important and then putting it to somebody's table in your current organization will achieve nothing. Nothing will change. And this is something we probably need to be a bit more vocal about in the future.
Yes. And it was also this was also the topic of the excellent Harvard Business Review article that I've now seen shared, at least in LinkedIn and also by you, Minna, yesterday. I think it's in the, I don't now know if it's from May Harvard Business Review or is there a new issue already out in June. But the topic is the changing role of the Chief Sustainability Officer. And whereas this has been almost like an extension to the communications role, the Sustainability Officer is becoming a more strategic player. And I myself see this as a continuation of the roles that we've seen that were that have been tasked with changing the company. We first saw the Chief Digital Officer, then we saw the Chief Customer Officer, and now we see the Chief Sustainability Officer taking the role of being almost like a designated transformation driver. But you can only succeed if you have high enough mandate and enough moving power across the leadership team, and you're able to engage so that the whole leadership team prioritizes the work, not just the chosen few ones. Any other comments for the discussion? Okay, I think that now that it's 11 sharp, that though we had tried to book extra time so that there would be enough time for discussion, I think many people have things already starting, so maybe it's also learning for us that an hour is much. Don't ask, don't expect more. But hey, thank you so much everyone for joining today, this morning. It was great to be launching the report with you, and you can find the full material from our site, but we will also send it to everyone who joined today together with the recording. So thank you so much and have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.